Hey, welcome back to the Amplified Podcast. It's good to see all of you guys for our final episode of the Book of Numbers. Sorry, we had to rearrange everything this week, so I'm still making sure everything's right. Final episode of the Book of Numbers, and we are going to wrap it up this episode. So we have chapters 35 and 36, and it has been a big week here for us at South Shore Christian Assembly in Lake Tahoe. So I talked about a little bit last week that this was the last time you were going to get to see some of the older decorations here at the church, and that this past week we would renovate it. All of that went extremely well, and if you can see behind me, I'm going to go this way. See behind me. All of that got put up this week. None of that was there. The blue wall is probably about 30 or 40 feet tall, at least. The cross is brand new. The carpet is brand new. We did so much. We ripped out 3,500 square feet of carpets. And then we personally laid about 2,000 square feet of carpets, squares. Obviously, we did the back wall that you can see right underneath me. Is our lobby. The lobby was renovated as well. And so it's been a wild week. And I say that all also to say this. I apologize that this episode is coming out on Tuesday instead of Monday, and that's happened the last couple Tuesdays because getting ready for this and then the week of has been wild. So I've been slammed, and this week we'll get ahead again now that everybody's out of town and everything is pretty much done. But yeah, we'll be back on schedule this next week. And so all that to say, it went really well this week. And if you contributed to the building fund here at the church, I want to say thank you so much for giving. And we're going to keep moving through the Bible together, except we're just in a much prettier place now. And so, okay, for our last episode of the Book of Numbers, I want you to keep in mind that this is a formula for how to create a nation, that God is trying to do more than just bring a ragtag group of people into the promised land and then just say, kind of like wash his hands of them and go, all right, I brought you guys this far. Good luck from here. No, he wants to make sure that they know how to live and operate and treat each other down to even the smallest things in their lives. Keep in mind, they lived in Egypt as slaves and then under a horrible system. So even if they did know how to, treat one another because of the way that things were in Egypt, the way that things were in Egypt was wrong. And so God is having to not only reteach them, but also kind of teach them for the first time how to live with one another, how to have a society, how to have actual rules and laws. Because remember, the Egyptians would have adjudicated everything for them. The Egyptians would have taken care of everything, including their food and where they were going to work and where they were going to sleep and everything to a certain degree, because they were slaves. They didn't do anything for themselves. They only did, hard labor. That's all they were used for. And so God liberates them, but he doesn't just liberate them so that they can just run wild. This isn't from order to authoritarianism to chaos. No, God wants to bring about order right in the center. And so that's a great point, actually, that Egypt was all about authoritarianism. So the pendulum swinging way to authoritarianism. The pendulum swinging way too far in one direction, where every single facet of your life is controlled as a slave. But if God were to just set them free in the promised land with no rules, no way to live, no way to set up a society, then the promised land, the promised land would have been just chaos. And chaos is no better than authoritarianism and the other way around. So God wants to come right here in the middle between them, and he wants to bring about order. And so that's what these chapters are about. And then next week, we're going to dive into Deuteronomy. And it's as if Moses sat down and said, when I start Deuteronomy, I want to get into some giants. I want to talk about, some of these giants out here, because it's almost immediately what he gets into. And so, of course, that goes all the way back to Genesis 6. And Yeah, we'll get into it next week. But again, God is trying to bring about a new group of people that can police themselves, that can treat each other with respect, that is different from everybody else around them. And so that's what we're going to read a little bit more about today. And so if you have your Bible, go ahead and open up to Numbers 35. If you're watching this 10 years after it's recorded, because it's still on YouTube and Spotify, hopefully Alabaster Bibles has the book of Numbers out by then. I highly recommend getting that, or the book of Deuteronomy for next week. I imagine they'll have them out by then. But as of the recording of this podcast in 2026, it's not out yet. So we'll see. Okay. Another thing about this room now is we have more light in here, and it's throwing me off every time I look at my screen over here. We'll fix it for next week. So, okay, here's what it says. Chapter 35 and 36, the final chapters of Numbers, and then we'll have one more book called Deuteronomy to finish out the law and the Torah. So, here's what it says. Then the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, saying, command the Israelites to give the Levites cities to live in from the inheritance of their possession. And you shall give to the Levites pasture lands around the cities. The cities shall be theirs to live in, and the pasture lands shall be there for their cattle and for their herds and for all their livestock. The pasture lands around the cities which you shall give to the Levites shall reach out from the wall of the city around it 1,000 cubits, about 1,500 feet around. You shall also measure outside the city on the east, southwest, and north sides 2,000 cubits, roughly 3,000 feet, with the city in the center. This shall belong to the Levites as pasture lands for the cities. So remember, the Levites don't get any land for themselves. They don't get, a tribal allotments where this is your county that you get to live in. No, they just get cities within all the other areas, because if you have, Israel, it looks like this. I could draw better Israel. So Israel is a pretty large piece of land if you are not going to be able to drive a car through it. And so you need to be able to have people in different areas around the nation that know all the law and know how to do the sacrifices and know how to take care of things. So that's why they're not all centralized in one location, because say you lived all the way up in the north and you're Mount Carmel or Tyre or Sidon, all the way up near the top, and Jerusalem's way, way down here. Well, then every time you want to make a sacrifice, you have to travel 40 miles to make a sacrifice and then travel back to your home. God didn't want them to have to do that. And so he was going to set up Levites in these cities within all the tribes where they could go and they could offer sacrifice the way they were supposed to. Again, the sacrifices are not meant to be a burden to the people. They're meant to be a release from sin, a release from guilt. But if you are avoiding giving sacrifice to the Lord because it's such a long journey, then that kind of defeats the purpose. So they get their own cities, and of course they have a little bit of pasture land, not so that they can have, an allotment, but it's literally just for their livestock to have somewhere to graze, because they got to eat too. So here we go. This is different now. This is cities of refuge. Verse 6, among the cities which you give to the Levites shall be the 6 cities of refuge, which you shall provide for the one who commits manslaughter to flee to. In addition to them, you shall give 42 cities to the Levites. 42 cities. So 12 tribes, 6 cities of refuge, plus another 42 cities. It's 48. They get roughly 4 cities per tribe. I don't think it evens out perfectly, because Judah is so much more massive than, say, Benjamin, and Manasseh is so much bigger than some of the other tribes. But it's roughly 4 cities per tribe. So you shall give the Levites 48 cities in all, together with their pasture lands. And as for the cities which you shall give from the possession of your Israelites, from the larger tribes you shall take many, and from the smaller tribes few. Okay, like I just said. Each tribe shall give at least some of its cities to the Levites in proportion to the size of its inheritance, which it possesses. So let me bring up a map really quick of how it all lines out with these tribes. So again, Manasseh, West and East Manasseh, I mean, it seems like it's taking up half of Israel. This whole huge section is all Manasseh on both sides of the Jordan River. Again, Judah is really supposed to take over Philistia, but they don't really. And I think theirs actually goes down farther than this map. Judah, again, is also like a quarter of all of the tribal allotment because they were a huge tribe. Whereas Simeon is going to be smaller, Dan's going to be smaller, Benjamin is going to be smaller, and they don't have to give up as many cities. It wouldn't make sense for Manasseh to only give up 4 cities and for Benjamin to do the same when Benjamin is so small. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelites, when you cross the Jordan River into the land of Canaan," let me reorient here, "then you shall select for yourselves cities to be cities of refuge, so that the one who kills any person unintentionally may escape there." So today we have, safe houses, we have jails, we have pretty strict police system, where if manslaughter does happen, there are protections for that person. But in a place where there's no, flock cameras and there's no police cars and there's nobody really watching, if someone commits manslaughter, their life is now kind of in danger of the family of the person that they have killed unintentionally. And so the Lord is even going to set up cities specifically for those reasons. "The city shall be as a refuge for the avenger, a refuge from the avenger, so that the one who's caused the death of another will not be killed until he has had a fair trial before the congregation." So this is kind of like, witness protection, that type of thing. "The cities which you are to provide shall be 6 cities of refuge." And if I remember correctly, they're spread out equidistant throughout Israel so that you're never more than a day's travel away from a city of refuge. If all the cities, most of them were down here in Judah, you lived up here in Asher, you accidentally kill your neighbor because your axe head flies off, it might take you 3 days, 5 days to get all the way down to Judah. And in that time, one of the family members may lose their cool and chase after you and kill you before you've had, a true trial. And so God is going to spread them out evenly throughout Israel. "These 6 cities shall be a refuge for the Israelites and for the stranger and the resident alien among them, so that anyone who kills a person unintentionally may escape there." Verse 16. "But if he struck the victim down intentionally with an iron object so that he died, he is a murderer." So God is making a distinction from the very beginning that there's a difference between manslaughter and murder. There's a difference between just the act of killing. You've killed someone unintentionally. You killed someone in war. And you've intentionally killed someone with malice, malice aforethought. "He is a murderer. The murderer shall certainly be put to death. If he struck the victim down intentionally with a stone in hand, which he may cause a person to die, and he died. If he struck down the victim intentionally with a stone in hand, which may cause a person to die, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall certainly be put to death. Or if he struck his victim down intentionally with a wooden object in his hand, which caused the person to die, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall certainly be put to death. The blood avenger shall himself put the murderer to death. He shall put him to death when he meets him." So if you had a brother that was killed by somebody and you are the closest relative of blood relation, you are the one that would avenge your brother, and you would be the one that executes this person that killed your brother intentionally. But if he pushed his victim out of hatred or threw something at him with malicious intent and he died, so now this is kind of getting into more specifics here. Or if in enmity, in anger, he struck the victim down with his hand and he died, the one who struck the victim shall certainly be put to death. He is a murderer. So this is getting into second-degree murder. You didn't intend to kill them. You didn't mean to cause their death, but you meant to hurt them, and you meant to hurt them really bad. That's getting into second and third degree territory. Manslaughter is completely unintentional. I was swinging my axe and the axe head flew off, and I should have been more careful. I should have checked it that morning, but it flew off and it hit my neighbor and happened to strike him right in the neck and he died. That's totally unintentional. It wasn't on purpose. Of course, you feel terrible about it. The family feels terrible about it, but somebody's going to want your head pretty quick because you should have been more careful. That's what the cities of refuge are for. The cities of refuge are not to save someone who killed someone intentionally. If you, with malice aforethought, killed someone, or if you pushed someone out of anger, or you threw something at someone out of anger, you wanted to hurt them, but you accidentally killed them in the process, then that's murder. It may be second-degree murder. It's not planned out. You haven't been trying to do it for 6 weeks, but you are a murderer in that case. And the Bible takes it very seriously. The blood avenger shall be shall put the murderer to death when he meets him. 22. This is getting into involuntary manslaughter. But if he pushed the victim suddenly, not in enmity, or threw anything at him without malicious intent, or without seeing him, he hit him accidentally with a stone object that could kill him. Maybe you're moving rocks around. You're moving rocks off the roof of your house. You're dropping them down. Someone's not paying attention. They walk by. You drop the stone off the top, and it hits them in the head. That's unintentional manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. Without seeing him accidentally with a stone object that could kill him, and he died, and the offender was not his enemy, nor intending to harm him, then the congregation shall judge between the offender and the blood avenger according to these ordinances. Were you being irresponsible? Were you actually doing this out of anger? Do you have a history of, beef with this person? Then, there may be a different kind of situation here. The congregation shall rescue the offender from the hand of the blood avenger and return him to the city of refuge, the place to which he had escaped, and he shall live there until the death of the high priest who is anointed with the sacred oil. So again, you killed someone unintentionally. It is your fault, but you didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. You messed up. There is a city for you to escape to, so that the person who's the blood avenger does not seize you and avenge their sibling, their father, whoever it was. But you have to live now in that city of refuge. Say you've been living, at the foot of Mount Carmel for a long time, and now you have to go down and live here in, the tribe of Asher or whatever. I don't know. You have to live in this new city. That's the way it works out. And you're going to have to live there until the current high priest, and they serve until they die, by the way. Maybe he's going to live another 30 years. Maybe he's got 2 years left in him. Maybe he's got 6 months. Maybe he just started. But you have to stay there until that high priest dies, because you should have been more careful. You should have checked your axe head that morning. You should have checked to see if anyone was below the house when you were dropping rocks off the top. You have got to be more careful, and there are consequences for your actions. You and your whole family have to live in this city of refuge now for however many years. You don't die. You're not at risk of being killed, but those are the consequences of your actions. If at any time the one who's guilty of manslaughter comes outside the border of a city of refuge, which he fled, the blood avenger finds him outside the border of a city of refuge and kills the offender, the blood avenger will not be guilty of murder. You have got to stay there until it's safe to come out. If you come out, you've left the area of safety and you are no longer in safety anymore. It's a lot like, we give our hearts to Christ, but if we decide later on, I don't want Christ anymore, I reject him, I'm pushing him away. You were in the city of refuge, but now you've stepped outside and you're going to have to pay for your own sins because you don't want Christ's sacrifice anymore. So that's what it's about. The Lord's trying to prevent, tit for tat and, Hatfields and McCoys type feuds that just go on forever because of one accident from the beginning. And so the Lord's trying to prevent all of that. Because the offender should have remained in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the high priest's death, the offender shall return to the land of his possession. And at that point, the blood avenger cannot kill them, on purpose. These things shall be a statute for you throughout your generations, wherever you may be. If anyone kills a person intentionally, the murderer shall be put to death on the testimony of 2 or more witnesses, but no one shall be put to the death on the testimony of only one witness. So again, the Lord doesn't want to get into this whole, we're just taking everyone at their word, 1-to-1. No, the Lord wants to make sure we have multiple witnesses for what's going on. Moreover, you shall not accept a ransom. So the Lord doesn't want you to be taking bribes. This is a problem all around the world where things don't happen unless there's bribery. That's not justice. Moreover, you shall not accept a ransom in exchange for the life of a murderer, guilty and sentenced to be put to death. He shall certainly be put to death. So there is no amount of bail money that the Lord is saying you get to put up so that you don't have to face your death. You killed someone, you forfeited someone's life, now you have to forfeit your life. You shall not accept a ransom for him who has escaped to his city of refuge, so that he may return to live in his own land before the death of the high priest. So there's no amount of money that's going to get you out of that city. You have to face the consequences of your actions. You shall not pollute and defile the land which you live. For the shedding of innocent blood pollutes and defiles the land. No atonement, expiation can be made for the land for the innocent blood shed in it, except by the blood of the execution of him who shed it. You shall not defile the land in which you live, in the midst of which I live, for I, the Lord, live among the people in Israel. So the Lord's saying, this is my house. You're going to play by my rules. And if someone kills someone intentionally, you don't get to take a bribe so that they don't have to pay the consequences, or they don't have to face the consequences of their actions. And the only way to not pollute the land is for the person who is the murderer to face their death. That's the way it works. A life for a life in this case. What's amazing here is that Christ gave his life for us. It was still a life for a life. We've been guilty of murder. We've been guilty of lying and cheating and deception and malice and all these types of things. It required the life of someone to pay the price. God paid the price for himself. He did not want to defile the land. So that's how it works. The Lord is setting up a society where, they're not going to live by bribes anymore. They're not going to let injustice just, be the rule of law. The Lord wants justice. I think it's later in Revelation where the Bible says the pillars of the Lord's kingdom, or maybe the scepters of his kingdom, are righteousness and justice. The right way of doing things, and, a person paying for their sins. That's what it's about. Okay, last chapter of Numbers. This is this is episode 18. We've made it to the end here of Numbers. Inheritance by marriage. The leaders of the father's household of the family of the sons of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, the families of Joseph, approached and spoke before Moses, before the leaders of the heads of the households of the Israelites. So now we're back to narrative. They said, the Lord commanded Moses to give the land by lot to the sons of Israel as an inheritance, and my Lord was commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance of the Zelophehad, our brother, to his daughters. So remember, this is back a few episodes ago where I'm going to spell his name right here. Zelophehad. Zelophehad. These people got wild names. Phehad. Zelophehad. Normally, the inheritance in the land would be passed down through the sons, so that it would always remain in the same territory. But Zelophehad only had 5 daughters, and so the Lord is no respecter of persons. He wants everyone to do well. He wants everyone to prosper, and so they bring it to him, and the Lord says, "Yeah, that sounds good to me. Give it to the daughters." Here's the problem, though. Those daughters are eventually going to get married, and their property that they had now comes into possession of the 2 of them. And from then on, it's going to be passed down through the father's territory. And so though it works out for this generation, what do we do when they get married? And let's say they marry someone from another tribe. Now we're losing all of this land to other tribes because these women went off and married guys from other tribes. If the daughters marry any of the men from the other tribes of Israel, then the inheritance will be taken away from that of our fathers, our tribal ancestors, and will be added to the inheritance of the tribe to which they belong. So it will be taken away from our allotted inheritance. When the year of Jubilee of the Israelites comes, then their inheritance will be added permanently to that tribe to which they belong, so that their inheritance will be taken away from the tribe of our fathers and our ancestors. So he's saying when they get married, their land is going to move into the possession of the husband's tribe. And then when the year of Jubilee comes, it's going to be permanently set there forever. What do? Moses commanded the Israelites in accordance with the word of the Lord, saying the statement of the tribe of sons of Joseph is correct. We're kind of in a conundrum here. This is what the Lord commands regarding the daughters of Zelophehad. Let them marry whom they wish, only they must marry within the family of the tribe of their father. So these are all sons of Manasseh. They're of the tribe of Manasseh. The rule is going forth that these daughters, we've given you this land, actually outside the customs by the grace of God. We're giving you this land. Because we've done that, you're going to have to marry within the tribe. So no inheritance of the Israelites shall be transferred from one tribe to tribe, for every one of the Israelites shall hold the inheritance of his tribe and his father's tribal ancestors. Every daughter who possesses an inheritance of land in any one of the tribes of Israelites shall marry only a man whose family is of her father's tribe, so that the Israelites may each possess the inheritance of his father's tribal ancestors. So the Lord is saying, this situation is probably going to come up again moving forward where a man just has daughters. Well, to keep things in order, normally it will pass down through the sons, but in that case, it's okay that it passes down to the daughters. That's fine. But in order for the tribes not to start splitting up and, having little pockets of like, oh, that actually belongs to Asher when it's right in the middle of Benjamin and that belongs, all this stuff, the Lord is saying when that happens, those girls will marry within the tribe so that the land can stay where it is. The Lord is the one who's apportioning the land, and he has his own reasons for it. And so he wants to keep it that way. A man who's of her father's tribe. Okay, verse 9. So no inheritance shall be transferred from one tribe to another, but each of the tribes of the Israelites shall hold to his own inheritance. The daughters of Zelophehad did as the Lord commanded. From Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, tough name, Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad were married to the sons of their father's brothers. Again, probably not their first cousins, I imagine. Just like when they say fathers, they mean their ancestors. So they're within their own tribe. They married into the families of the descendants of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of the family of their father. These are the commandments and ordinances and judgments which the Lord commanded through Moses to the sons of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. So the Lord is trying to do more than just set them free. He's trying to set them up for success and help them build a community. What is that going to look like generations from now? How are you going to treat each other? How are you going to deal with accidental deaths? How are you going to deal with inheritances? Lord is trying to set them up for success for generations to come. Not so that they're just a ragtag group of people that's been set free. No, he wants them to be a society that shows the rest of the world this is how we live, this is how we behave. And God's doing a pretty good job of it. It's the people that have the problems. And so that is the end of the book of Numbers. I don't know how long I thought this podcast would take when I started it. I found out later on it would take about 10 years, which is fine with me. But Numbers 36 is the final chapter. And in the next episode, we are moving on into Deuteronomy. And soon we will be done with the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And so thank you so much for watching along with us. We're going to keep moving through the Bible together. And as the channel grows, please like and subscribe and leave any comments. And tell your friends about this podcast. If you know anyone with dyslexia, maybe it's hard for them to read, or you know someone who hasn't read the Bible for themselves or is having a hard time understanding this, tell them about this podcast. Tell them about there's some guy who's just walking through the Bible and I'm learning things. And so we would love to see this podcast grow. So like and subscribe and tell people about it. And we will see you guys next week.